Hey guys, so I wanted to better understand the universal hatred for this movie. I found this great video that kind of explains it, breaks it down point by point, because there's not one reason why everybody hates the new Snow White, although everybody truly does hate it. But yeah, so let's get into why people hate Snow White so much.
After everything that's happened, you'd think it'd be impossible for the upcoming Snow White film to fall any further, but somehow Disney found a way. And with the recent release of the official trailer, the Snow White disasters got even worse. Now, Snow White has been played up as one of Disney's biggest projects, and as such, you'd think they go above and beyond with the marketing. However, as we all know, it's been an absolute train wreck from the beginning, ever since the main co-stars trashed on the original characters. And all during this build-up, audiences barely got a peek at the official trailer. It was all just these teasers that never really amounted to anything.
Yeah, so these teaser trailers, by the way, they dropped a teaser trailer a couple of months ago, and it got like 1 million dislikes and 30,000 likes. So it got ratioed like into the Earth's crust. That's my hypothesis for why the marketing has been pretty scant on this. There's been a lot of negativity online about this. So then he's going to talk about when the official trailer dropped here.
Most were expecting Disney to publish the official Snow White trailer alongside the release of Wicked, as not only would it be a smart marketing move, but it made the most sense thematically. And while that's exactly what Disney did, their strategy was unconventional. The trailer and official poster were only available in a few theaters. For just over a week, promotions didn't go any further. No one could find the official new trailer anywhere.
Yeah, so I didn't know about this till recently, but I guess when they first originally released the trailer, they only did so in Brazil. Which again, kind of weird if you're wanting people to go see your movie just to, but I guess they were field testing it. There must have been some kind of strategic reason why they chose Brazil, but that was the only place you could see the official trailer for like a week. Kind of weird.
Someone leaking a recording of it before the rest of the internet could even get a glimpse. But still, not even the leak got Disney to post the trailer on its official accounts. It was almost like the studio was desperate to keep their trailer out of the public eye, like they were trying to avoid ridicule for as long as possible, especially seeing how much of a disaster it had been already. Even Disney had to face the music at some point, and on the 3rd of December they finally posted the official trailer to YouTube, and the world would quickly let the studio know exactly what they thought of it.
Some of these comments. This trailer saved my dad. He has been in a coma for 8 months, and when I played this trailer, he woke up and got out of bed to turn it off. Thank you, Disney. If I saw this movie on a plane, I would still walk out. Some of these comments have more likes than the actual video itself. And that's what this comment section is like. I mean, this comment section is just so entertaining. I highly recommend you check it out. But this is the kind of thing that people are dropping on the official trailer, and it's nothing but this. I mean, you could scroll for days and it's nothing but these kind of like, it's just, they're all dunking on this movie. And so I wanted to better understand like what has been happening, because up until now, this all seems pretty vague, right? So, but he'll get into some specifics.
Now, at the time of making this video, the trailer currently has around 660,000 more.
That's so bad. The universal hatred for this is, I mean, people are being united over their hatred for this. It's crazy.
More dislikes than likes, and that number is still massively climbing. But remarkably, one of the only redeeming things about this entire fiasco is that Disney actually left the comments on the trailer, and it's almost more entertaining than anything Disney's put out recently. Some wonderful gems included. At this point, the monetization of the video is going to earn Disney more revenue than the movie itself, and they finally did it. They made a movie nobody is going to pirate. Those who haven't seen the trailer may wonder if it's really as bad as the comments are making out to be, and we can say with certainty that it may be even worse. The trailer makes Snow White feel like an unholy amalgamation of all the worst aspects of modern Disney. The bad CGI, the oversaturated colors, the preachy woke actors, the character assassinations to tell a more modern story, because apparently old fairy tales can't teach valuable lessons anymore.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the storytelling aspect. This is sort of my lane here. So it's interesting. A lot of people imagine that the timeline of politics is like, you know, the more time goes, just like the more progressive and better everything gets, which if you know a lot about history, you know not to be the case. Things ebb and flow all the time. And so we'll get into some comments that the lead actress made about that. But what's interesting is, you know, companies like Disney trying to remake all these old properties, they see themselves as updating the story, making it more modern or whatever. And a lot of times, you know, in my opinion, this makes the story worse. Because I think a lot of times modern day storytellers are too literal. And so they see certain elements of the story being regressive when actually they're changing things unknowingly that make the story actually have more psychological depth to it. Real quick on just Snow White in general, it's a story of like, female consciousness, or, the female psyche. It's a mother and a daughter. The mother cares a lot about being the fairest of them all, and the daughter does not care at all. And the envy eventually eats the evil queen away. Like, she's so envious of her daughter, and she's, destroyed in the end by that. And Snow White doesn't care at all about being the fairest of them all. Could care less. And she frolics in the woods with animals and dwarves and just ignores it. And she's the one that gets the happy ending. And, you could go into a million different directions with this, but the modern retelling, they're talking about, we shouldn't care, that women shouldn't care about being the fairest of them all because, who cares what men think and blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's already in the story. Like, the story is already kind of giving that message. So they're trying to rewrite the story, but in doing so, like, they totally obscure that message. And you'll see he talks a little bit about this. Another interesting historical note here is the Grimm's fairy tale is much darker than the Disney version. So the Grimm's fairy tale came out in like 1852, a little less than 100 years before the Disney movie. In Disney, they sanitized it. They took out a lot of the gruesome kind of dark parts. The Grimm's version of this story, Snow White, is much more dark and gruesome. And so Disney is they've already sanitized the story once. And so to my mind, it's like they're trying to sanitize it again, just like with different moral priorities this time. And it's like you can only sanitize something so many times before the original germ of the story is just like gone. Interestingly enough, like the Grimm fairy tale, they had to reissue multiple versions of their fairy tales because the original versions offended so many like middle-class literate people. So this is not new. This is like an old phenomenon, like more well-to-do people being offended by like more working class stories, because the Grimm's fairy tales were told by tales that come from like the illiterate peasant class of, German farmers and stuff. And so it's just interesting to me that this dynamic continues to play out even to this day. It's like a very old pattern, something that Disney's really always done. And they're continuing to do it to this day, but it's like they're sanitizing stuff so much that it's like, what is really left of these stories?
And all of this has been rolled into one massive controversial mess. It seems like the trailer's trying to tell two stories, the original Disney tale and its modernized counterpart. As a result, it all just feels very...
Again, yeah, Disney one is not the original. Just keep that in mind. Like, the Disney one is a sanitized version. Maybe he's unaware of this, but I mean, that's a lot of people haven't read the Grimm. The Grimm version's like 7 pages long. It's a great story. Dark, and it's a lot weirder than the Disney movie, but worth reading.
Disconnected. Disney's designed the film to look like the original movie and included moments from it, but there's no room for any of it in their modern retelling. And it leaves you wondering how they plan to fit the old hag tricking Snow White into eating the apple and Snow White bravely confronting the queen in the same story. The one doesn't work with the other, unless of course they're hoping nostalgia will draw crowds and plan to swap them once they're in their seats. It just seems like nothing about any of this makes any sense. And this is all made worse by the fact that they use horrendous CGI.
Yeah, the CGI, the dwarves, it looks pretty rough, I'm not going to lie. And this is one of the many controversies surrounding this movie, but apparently there's a big controversy around casting people, casting little people or people with dwarfism to actually play, the dwarves in this story. And totally understand it. Like, that's a tough nut to crack, I guess. Like, whichever way you look at that, it's, there's not an easy answer. They probably could have just done like what the Hobbit movies did and just like cast people of average stature and just like make them look shorter. I mean, there were dwarves in the Hobbit movie and there was no like controversy. So this just seems to be kind of mismanaged on so many levels. They could have, but the CGI, the dwarves in the Disney movie are so iconic, and they're like the backbone of the whole story. For them to look like this, I think, is a big misfire.
It feels like Disney took a scalpel to the original movie, but rather than carefully carving it into something new, it hacked away at this with reckless abandon. Every bit of animation feels oversaturated, artificial, and just lifeless. While the creatures move around and pull expressions similar to their 2D counterparts, there's just no life to them. None of the magic that Walt Disney originally thought of. They're essentially just glorified plushies, and the dwarfs are even worse. Knowing the whole scandal about the dwarfs to begin with Peter Dinklage even pressuring Disney not to use dwarf actors.
Yeah, this is the controversy I was alluding to. I guess Peter Dinklage got involved talking about representation in Hollywood and not delving into into stereotypes. I guess he made some public statements, and then Disney responded, and it just became like a whole mess. And there's not a silver bullet for this one. It's just is what it is. You go in either direction, you're going to run into problems. If you cast little people as dwarves, or if you animate them, you're going to run into problems either way.
It was originally supposed to be 7 diverse magical dwarves, but now seeing the huge backlash to that, their faces are an unfortunate combination of animation and hyper-realism, and the result's terrible. It's hard to...
If you just notice, like, the movements of the dwarves even look like weird. The way they move their bodies looks unnatural.
Believe that a studio like Disney with all its resources could have such terrible CGI. This is the same studio responsible for producing Narnia, and yet somehow even Narnia, an almost 20-year-old film with a smaller budget and less advanced technology, has better CGI. It's a real wonder how Disney went from designing a realistic lion with natural facial expressions to an over-cartoonized turtle. Knowing the amount of hate the film's already got just from the actresses alone, Disney also seems to have really abandoned the production value here. And it's not just the animals and dwarfs that feel artificial. The sets look very obviously green screened, and something about the costumes feels off. They seem almost cheap and plastic, like toys designed for children rather than set pieces for a multi-million-dollar movie. The people are the only things that don't feel like they were pulled out of a cartoon, and as a result, they just look out of place. The only person who doesn't seem to look out of place in the trailer...
So I agree with his general comments here on the visuals. There does look like a kind of like a plasticky quality to the visuals, but I gotta say the hag, she looks really good. She looks really reminiscent of the original, and yet kind of creepy in like a new and interesting way. So that was one element. I agree with him here. Some of the other visuals look a little kind of glossed over. Whether you like it or not, doing a live action remake, the visuals are going to be a big focus for people.
There was the old hag. Now I know it's meant to be a kids movie, and children may not be worried about the smaller details as much, but kids still deserve good content, and so do adults. And Disney has become so reliant on CGI in the last few years that their projects just seem so lazy. You don't even have to go that far back to see how much the over-reliance on CGI has changed the complete...
Last year during an investors call, Bob Iger was talking about, the CEO of Disney, he was talking about how they recognize that the quality of some of their productions has dipped, and he attributes this to focusing on quantity rather than quality, and Disney just pumps out so much content. The reason I think some of the experiences is deteriorating is because they have limited resources and they're pumping out so much. And I think they should start focusing on quality over quantity.
Quality of the studio as a whole. And you know it's just this corporate soulless board at the top of the company looking to cost cut and make as much profit from this stuff as possible. I mean, you just look at the difference between Lily James's dress in Cinderella and Zegler's in the new trailer. There's absolutely no contest. And the fact that there's barely a 10-year difference...
I didn't even remember that they had made a Cinderella movie. That's crazy. I don't know who's watching these live action remakes. I don't know who these are for. I didn't even remember that they made a Cinderella. That's crazy.
Between the two films is devastating. Not even the acting can save this abomination of a film, and in some cases is actually contributing to its failure. While Rachel Zegler is currently one of the most disliked Disney actresses, due to her terrible interviews last year, her role isn't actually unearned. She can deliver the lines well, and there's no denying that she can sing. However, Gal Gadot's performance as the evil queen leaves much to be desired. The thing about Disney villains is that they're meant to be dramatic, larger than life, and very fun to watch. No matter how evil they might be, you just can't help but enjoy every moment they're on screen. It's because you just...
I think they should have cast Kim Kardashian as the evil queen and Kylie Jenner as Snow White.
Know that the actors behind them were probably having the best time. They also have undeniable talent and presence. Even when hidden behind the facade of a cartoon lion, Jeremy Irons commands the room. Be Prepared is one of the most well-loved songs from The Lion King, because he and Jim Cummings put their all into the performance.
Be Prepared is so good. I still listen to that song to this day. Stick with me and you'll never go hungry again.
Which is a huge contrast to Gal Gadot, who really doesn't seem to care about this movie anymore, all while secretly hating her co-star and having no real presence for the character of the evil queen. This character is meant to be regal, cold and calculating, someone so obsessed with her own beauty that she's willing to command the death of her own stepdaughter. Someone who loses that beauty because her obsession drives her to sacrifice it just so that...
So that's true. Like and what's funny is in the original Grimm's version, and this was a version that people were offended by in like 1852, the original fairy tale was that the evil queen was Snow White's biological mother, not her stepmother. And people were so offended by that they changed it to be her stepmother. So this really originally was a story truly about the envy between a mother and a daughter. Pretty like deep, dark connotations. Who knows what the original inspiration was? Like if a German peasant mother envious of her daughter that she tried to poison her. I don't know like what originally inspired it, but it's a dark story and progressively like sanitized over time. But he's right here. I mean, the backbone of the story really is the queen's envy. You could even say in the original version, the queen is almost more of a main character than Snow White is. And in the movie version, they changed that to be, it's more focused around Snow White.
She can rob someone else of theirs. But there doesn't seem to be any of that obsession in Gadot's version of the evil queen. While we could chalk this up to the fact that they've changed some aspects of the story, it's mostly because of Gal Gadot's delivery. She seems more stiff and just irritated that her stepdaughter has opinions, and her obsession with her beauty has become more surface level vanity. Just based on the trailer, we can tell that Gal Gadot's evil queen orders Snow White's death, and it will probably have very little intimidation behind it. In less than 2.5 minutes, Disney seems to have destroyed their most prized creation, the original film that started it all for Disney. And
this is true. Like, this was the first feature film that Disney ever made in 1937, and it was hugely successful. A sanitized version of a creepy fairy tale to appease the middle class bourgeoisie. I mean, it's really what it was. The original cultural appropriation.
Seems like nobody on the set even cares about the film, with most of the actors seemingly hating the original characters.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That just, like, the amount of smugness is no longer 1937. It's just like, I can see why that rubbed people the wrong way, I think. If something is worth remaking, then enough people still like the original to remake it. So it's funny, like she clearly does have disdain for it, which is funny.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about...
Okay, again, like the original Grimm version, Snow White is not saved by the prince. In the original Grimm version, 1852, not saved by the prince. The saved by the prince stuff was Disney. In the original version, Snow White dies. She's poisoned by the apple. They're carrying her to the castle in her casket, and the apple like falls out of her mouth accidentally, and she's revived. It's so weird. It's a weird story, but it's awesome.
About becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was...
Man, yeah, like so Rachel Zegler's 23, and God love her. Like if my political opinions were out there as a 23-year-old, like that would be a doozy. So, you know, she's really young, and, you know, she probably has like the best intentions or whatever, but yeah, this is just, I can see why people responded to her the way she did. It seems a little off-putting. I mean, look at Gal Gadot's face even. She's like, oh boy, this is a little heavy-handed.
Fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
And the production crew constantly changing what's actually going to happen in the movie. Since being cast, Rachel Zegler has been one of the studio's biggest problems. She's been at the center of numerous controversies and gone out of her way to make enemies with people with much more power than her, and even her own co-star. But unfortunately for Disney, her latest scandal wasn't a spat with a more popular celebrity, or even the characters like she did previously. This time, she decided she would take on more than half of her country. Now, whether you're left or right wing, it doesn't really matter here. It's all about virtue signaling Hollywood, which is why when Trump won the election recently, Zegler was not happy, but not for any normal reasons. Showing that she needed to prove to the world that she was on the right side of history, she took to her Instagram and wrote a strongly worded story about how disappointed and heartbroken she was over the country's decision, calling Trump a threat to democracy and finishing off her post with a wish that Trump and his supporters would never know peace.
That's sick. Dude, what a thing to wish on somebody. Not only on somebody, but on 80 million people. I mean, just from a PR perspective, that's crazy. Like, that's not going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. It's the Michael Jordan quote. You know, back in the day, Michael Jordan was kind of pressured politically on some things, like in the public eye, because he was seen as very neutral. He didn't seem like he leaned one way or the other, and so he always got some flack from Democrats who were like, hey, you should be more clear on your political stances. And he was like, Republicans buy shoes too. Like, he did not want to alienate any of his customer base, whether you agree with that or not. I mean, you can see if you're saying 80 million people in the country you don't want to know peace, I mean, that's wild. I understand being upset that Trump won, but that's That's crazy.
No matter which side of the political aisle you're on, this is a pretty strong statement for a mainstream actor. Not really the sort of thing you want from a woman playing a Disney princess, as more than half the country were understandably angered by Ziegler's words, and started calling for her to be fired, which isn't the first time that people have called for this. After this, people suspected that Disney sent her a very stern email, as Ziegler quickly returned to Instagram to deliver a half-hearted apology. She explained that she let her emotions get the best of her, and was committed to contributing positively towards a better tomorrow. The apology is very carefully worded, as if Disney had told her exactly what to say. However, no one else was buying it. Ziegler had shown her true colors once again, and after many forced apologies, nobody was buying it anymore. But it wasn't just hurting Snow White's chances of success, it was also poking holes in Disney's paper-thin arguments over its integrity, as there's been far too many scandals to count with Disney.
Yeah, so some of these articles and videos are talking about what I alluded to earlier, like they're pumping out too much content, and it's not good. Like if you make one groundbreaking, really good movie, you could make as much money as some of all of these like small misfires have made
in recent years. And we've actually made several videos in the past discussing just this alone. And Disney, seeing the backlash they've got to all their virtue signaling stuff, are now.
And I don't know if it's like necessarily about virtue signaling. Like you can put political stuff into your story. There's nothing wrong with that. There's always going to be some political themes and stories. But it's like when you make it really shallow, like when you make the stakes of the story just literal interpretations of like political events, that's like, to me, that's like very condescending. You're just making everything about current day politics. It's like there are deeper issues at play that lead people to have political opinions. Like whether you could totally agree with the politics of something and still think, like that was condescending. Why did I pay $25 to go see something where you could have just, it could have been summed up in like a slogan? It doesn't really plumb the depths of anything.
Now trying to reel it in, but it seems like they're losing control of all of this, which is why many suspect that Disney is once again bracing itself for a rough start to 2025. This comes after many years of disaster, as money has just been going down the drain for the company recently. Now, of course, Disney is notorious for having big budgets for its films. It dedicates thousands of hours and millions of dollars to projects that people love. However, it seems like as the cost of projects has gone up, the quality has also taken a nosedive, as we can quite clearly see with Snow White. According to
And for those of you who don't know like much about movie budgets, that's a lot. I mean, some of these numbers get thrown around and it's like, oh, okay, that's a lot of money for any production.
Forbes, production costs have jumped up to $269.4 million, and that was just because of reshoots after the backlash over Disney's replacements for the dwarfs and other elements of the movie. This time the studio can only blame itself. While Disney was forced to admit they'd overspent their budget, it refused to admit defeat. A $55.5 million reimbursement from the UK government gave the studio a bit of leeway, but the cost of the film was still insane. And the crazy thing is that these aren't even the final numbers. And yet by looking at the trailers and the reception to it online, it seems like this movie is going to be yet another giant train wreck for the studio. For almost 2 years now, Disney has spent so much money on reshoots, post-production and marketing just for this movie. So it's safe to assume that by the time Snow White makes it onto the big screen, its total cost will be well over $300 million. Because of the drama surrounding the upcoming movie, most doubt it'll even break even, much less profit. To put into perspective, The Little Mermaid suffered a $5 million loss, and this was despite having a lead actress that was at least likable. Meanwhile, Ziegler appears to be one of the main reasons people are sworn off watching Snow White, not to mention the huge list of all the other things. With this in context, it's easy to understand why they avoided releasing the official trailer and poster for so long. Arguably, the best thing Disney can do now is accidentally lose all the footage from the project and use it as a tax write-off.
Yeah, that's crazy. They're definitely not going to do that, but that would really be something, right? You can see like there's multiple issues here. There's the Rachel Zegler stuff. She clearly doesn't like the original story. That's kind of neither here nor there. Just she's very open with it. I don't think she understands like the original message of this, like the message of the original story. In my opinion, the message of the original story is already like pretty feminist, whether you like that or not. The evil queen is like obsessed with other people's perceptions of her, and Snow White is not. And that's why Snow White's the hero, because she's ambivalent and she doesn't care, and she gets the happy ending. In the Grimm's version of the fairy tale, the prince doesn't save her. There are no rules with storytelling. You can change anything to be whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it does matter how people respond to it. It is a business, so you have to make money. I mean, it's been like a 100-year run for Disney, almost. And so it's interesting, like, has Disney run its course? I mean, they've lasted a long time. They've had a great run. Maybe the Disney model has run out of steam. Well, let's take old fairy tales and then just continue to sanitize them until there's literally nothing left. You're just holding a bottle of bleach at the end. So yeah, for my Tolkien people, I'm so glad that Tolkien did not sell Lord of the Rings to Disney. I guess they were in talks for a little bit about that while he was still alive, and he refused. He saw the writing on the wall, which is like a common Tolkien W.